Right, Mavis, welcome to episode 6 of These Little Victories with myself, Jay Fender. Now, before we get into today's pod, I want to let you know that my indie rock band, my sensational indie rock band, Affleck's Palace, will be touring the UK in May 2024. We'll be playing Aberdeen, Glasgow, Newcastle, Nottingham, Sheffield, Northampton, London, Bristol and Manchester. So yeah, tickets are on sale now, and you know what? Tickets make sensational Christmas and birthday presents, so grab yourself a couple of them, and we'll see you down the front in May. Also, I run an independent record label that's self-financed, and we have a small but perfectly formed roster, including artists such as Pastel, who supported Liam Gallagher at Nebworth, Vega Rally, whose debut EP just hit number 4 in the UK vinyl chart, Ava Carlisle, daughter of Robert Carlyle, the actor, my band Affleck's Palace, and AJ Gallagher. So yeah, if you're into supporting independent record labels and ventures, and you want to support this podcast, head over to Spirit of Spike Island, where you can pick up merch from tees, vinyls, all sorts of bits and bobs. And see if anything piques your interest. Now, today's guest is Chesney Hawkes, probably best known for his 1991 mega hit, The One and Only. Now, in the podcast, we discuss many things, from what it was like to have a worldwide hit when he was 19, what it was like to write and record his second album with Nik Kershaw. Now, if you're not familiar with Nik Kershaw, his peak was probably in the 80s. He's an artist in his own right. And he had songs like, I won't let the sun go down on me, and wouldn't it be nice to be in your shoes? Anyway, he wrote the second album with that geezer. We talk about that, his love for West Ham, many things. Now, Chesney has a huge gig coming up at Kentish Town Forum on the 31st of May next year. Tickets are on sale now, so grab them whilst you still can. And I think he's planning to put out an album around that time. So follow him on Instagram so he can keep you up to date with that release, etc. But for now, let's get into the podcast, and I'll see you on the next one. Nice. You've been doing quite a lot of shows over the summer, haven't you? How's that been?
Yeah, it's been great. Loads of like boutique festivals and stuff. You know, that's been really quite fun. I love those little festivals. You know, like kind of like you turn up to a place like, you know, I think we did one in Malton in North Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And it's just like community comes together. You know what I mean? And it's like families and kids and everything, and you know, and there's obviously a local boozer doing the beer and stuff. I don't know.
Malton. Someone was telling me the other day that his mother-in-law lives in Malton, and he was saying that it's quite a foodie kind of place.
Yeah.
Loads of independent food shops.
Yeah,
He was
the food was really good there as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was called Meadowfest, that one.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's loads of them cropping up and down the country. You've probably played them yourself.
Yeah,
I love them. Yeah.
I think the thing with festivals is that you don't really have a pressure on you to sell tickets, or you know, no. you get your fee and you turn up, and it's all quite relaxed, and then you go on to a crowd that's already there, ready to
already up for it.
Yeah. And hopefully there are a few drinks in, and you have a good time. You don't take yourself too seriously, and also you get to see other bands backstage, and you bump into interesting people and from the crowd and backstage who want to say hello, and
but I like the community spirit of it all, like meeting the people that are running it, and it's often kind of family run, and you know, there'll be like just people from the community coming together and you know, enjoying a day out together. You know what I mean? I love that side of it.
Yeah. Have you support West Ham, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you done many gigs over there, that end of town? I think you did one. I'm sure I saw you doing an interview where it was something to do with West Ham. Was it? Did you play a gig?
I've done loads of stuff for West Ham over the years, but the latest one I did was I played the fan festival in Prague. For the
that is it.
For the UEFA Conference League final.
Yeah, of course.
And that was the best Wednesday of all time.
Of course.
It was like more fun you should possibly have on a random Wednesday, you know. Yeah, there's 25,000 people, claret and blue, bubbles, confetti, you know, it was mad. And we brought out all the West Ham stuff. We did West Ham are massive, and you know, I'm for blowing bubbles, and we were doing like songs because at the time Declan Rice hadn't left yet, so I did this whole "Please don't go." Yeah, and I had my brother on drums. He's been my drummer since day one, so he's a proper West Ham as well. And I had my son, another West Ham nut, and my best mate came along as well. So it was like a proper amazing day, and then we went to the final, and of course we won it. So it was just like,
what a moment!
Yeah, proper.
But it's funny, when I was in school, I went to school in Leeds, and everybody was either Leeds or Man United fan.
Yeah.
Some York City fans, but primarily it was mostly Leeds fans. Yeah. But there was one kid in my class, shout out Daniel Osborne.
All right, Dan.
Yeah, he'd come up with his family because his father, from Dagenham, his father had got a job up there, and he was best mates with Harry Knapp.
Oh, was he?
His dad was very, very friendly with Harry Redknapp.
So he was a hammer then?
A massive hammer.
Wow.
But this was when West Ham were
always
struggling.
Up and down, yo-yo club.
Absolutely, and they were always at the bottom. And because we didn't really have any association with West Ham and we only saw them at the bottom, we used to get rinsed because that was when Leeds were kind of flying.
Yeah, now look at them.
Oh, gosh. Well, they're flying.
Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, yeah, eat that. But even though we rinsed him, I always had an affinity for West Ham after that.
Yeah.
Just because of Upton Park and, Julian Dix and Ludwig McCloskey and all these kind of like players in the 90s, and Tony Cottee coming in, and...
Well, I mean, that was 80s. Tony Cottee and Frank McAvenny and...
Yeah. But
Julian Dix
back,
as well.
Didn't he?
Yeah, he did come back. Yeah, exactly.
That was more my era where I didn't see... Because the first time I saw Tony Cottee playing was when he played for Everton.
Yeah, of course.
And he was banging him in.
Yeah.
And then he went back to West Ham when they had those really massive oversized shirts with Dagenham motors on them.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And they were always kind of in the Premier League. They were always the second team that I looked to see if they won.
Yeah, it's funny. I think West Ham's a lot of people's second team.
Yeah,
or kind of like a team that you wouldn't necessarily admit, but you kind of like a bit of West Ham.
I think it's because their fans are just. They come from a very working class,
it's a working class,
authentic background. You don't really get glory supporters going to watch them.
No,
they're there,
true.
Come rain or shine, because they are loyal fans. Whereas with other London clubs, it feels like tourists go to watch them.
Oh, completely. Like, you Chelsea fans that, that only came along after Abramovich came along, or
absolutely,
or Spurs fans that they're top of the league, so
Well, this is it.
And Arsenal's the same.
Yeah.
But
I think after once I think there was a huge gear change when Arsenal left Highbury and went to this monolith of us. Yeah, it kind of took away that. Kind of like legacy and history and trueness to what their history.
You could say the same thing about West Ham.
Well, this is it as well. Now they've gone to
the London Stadium.
That's it. Is that in Stratford? Actually, I'm not sure. I don't know. It is in Stratford. Yeah. And when they left Upton Park.
Yeah, I miss those days, like the chicken run, and like I used to go. My brother and I went home and away from mid '80s.
Right.
We were absolute rabid fans. We'd go all the games,
right.
And so we would literally, if you're at the front, you could almost touch the players.
Yeah, I remember Upton. You were literally. It was a bit like it was similar to White Hart Lane. It felt like you were on the pitch. If the ball got hoofed, you'd get it in the shots.
Yeah. You could kind of like. You could actually talk to the players.
Yeah.
Not that there was much talking, there's a lot of swearing. That's where I learned my swearing.
Yeah, well, of course.
I mean, all sorts of choice words going on there.
Well, you see, and also, I mean, I read Cass Pennant's book from the IC. Do you know who he is? He was one of the, I'm sure it's Cass Pennant. He was one of the main guys in the ICF.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Intercity firm.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And he, some of the stories that he came up with. A friend of mine, who also works in music. I won't name him because he might be a little bit kind of. I don't want to put him in a bad light, but he was part of the ICF as well.
Right.
And some of the stories he told me about Cass, and really interesting time for football, because it felt like England was at that time was in the mid 80s to late 80s was kind of coming out of this, was becoming a little bit more sophisticated. We were getting different types of food and more people influx, and it was becoming a bit more progressive.
Gastropubs and all that shit.
And it's kind of like the football hooligan aspect kind of died down, but the working class kind of.
Well, that was always an outlet for working class, wasn't it? So
getting yourself down there.
And the firms are still there, man. They're still there, and they still meet up. But it's just, I think since the money's gone crazy in the Premier League, I think it changed everything in that respect. Because, for a start, like the cost of the tickets just went through the roof.
Oh yeah.
So you can hardly get into bloody games these days. Back then it was like a tenner, and and you're in.
Absolutely. Yeah. But no, Leeds in the 90s, when I used to go to Ellen Road and watch them, and seeing Yeboah play. I met Yeboah. I got taken into the dressing room once.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. My mum's friend was the head of PR for Leeds, and so I got taken in by the goalkeeper called Mark Beanie, who was the reserve goalkeeper, and I went in and I met Lee Sharp and.
Oh,
Tony
fantastic.
Yeboah's legs were he was sat down
like tree trunks.
Yeah, honestly, I've never seen a bloke with bigger legs in my life.
Yeah.
That's why he could kick the ball as hard as he could.
Yeboah, on he goes! Oh! Even by his standards, breathtakingly.
His legs were huge. Yeah. Met Ian Rush, and
it's amazing meeting those kind of heroes, isn't it? It's like, so for me, because I was a kid, like growing up with Tony Cottee, Frank McAvenny, Ian Brady, people like that, Lynn Brady, and Mark Ward, and all those amazing players of yesteryear, and then Billy Bonds, those kind of people, Julian Dix, and years later, when I was kind of like in my late teens, obviously, I suddenly had this rush of fame come along. Sure. And then West Ham were like, throwing me tickets and come and hang out in our box with Todd Carty and that kind of stuff. And I ended up meeting all those people. It's like, and Frank McAvenny is now like, someone I text now and again.
Amazing.
It's just so weird.
It is odd, isn't it? Like when you. I don't know, when you see people who've experienced this success and you've been to their shows, or you've been to watch them play football, or you've seen them act on television. I'm quite friendly with Robert Carlyle now. His daughter's signed to my label, and I've been out for coffee with him, but I'm a big fan of his
brilliant
work.
Actor.
Yeah,
one of the greatest actors, from the UK.
I agree.
Ever.
And he's played some iconic roles.
Oh, fantastic!
And now I can just text him, and it's normal, it's fine and everything, but. You kind of sometimes go, that is kind of crazy, because I was so into his work, and it's nice.
But it's funny, we go back to footballers though. When now that I'm a bit older, obviously, I went to I did a whole thing at the World Cup. I did a gig. I was the halftime show at the England-Wales game at this World Cup.
I remember,
and
I saw it because I was like, Steve, Chesney's on telly.
Yeah. So that was mad, but obviously I love football, and I was like, watching. And absolutely thinking you're idolising these people, And then after the game, I was in the tunnel. I got to meet everyone,
Great.
And giving Declan Rice a cuddle, and then Jude Bellingham comes down and giving him a high five and stuff. And what you realise is they are kids.
Of course,
they are children. I mean, Jude Bellingham is 2 years younger than my eldest son.
Absolutely,
you know what I mean? It's like
it's remarkable.
You don't realise, you don't think about it because they're so on the top of their game and so incredibly athletic and everything else. And you just watch them think, and there's all these older men who say, "Yo, fucking can't, you got to get this right." And but then when you actually meet them, you're like, "Oh shit, they're kids.
They're still developing.
They're still
as people,
little,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, until you get to 25, they say your brain isn't fully developed anyway.
It's mad, isn't it?
So and to have all this wealth and pressure put on top of them as a consequence of the money they're receiving,
Totally.
and you know, a country being behind them. Did you watch the David Beckham documentary?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
When he
pressure.
when he booted that geezer, and it was like he
Yeah.
hardly touched him, and he was, was he 23 or
Yeah,
22?
22, I think.
I mean, 22, and like the whole country's like people spitting at him and all that
and
kind
like
of
burning effigies of him and
stuff.
you know,
It's just
stuff like that.
crazy.
Poor, I felt for him. I
did.
I remember feeling for him at the time. Because you know, obviously we were all pissed off because it was our big chance. It was like the golden generation
Absolutely.
of footballers that probably should have won something
yeah.
at that time. And you know, they just needed a scapegoat, really. You know,
Well,
because the truth is,
absolutely.
it wasn't his fault. They went to penalties, and anything can happen in penalties. That
Yeah.
game, you know.
Was that the one where Sol Campbell scored a goal in injury time and it got disallowed, or was that another game?
I can't remember now, man.
I remember watching Owen score that goal.
Oh, that was amazing. He was only 18, wasn't he?
And he just
Yeah.
and he pretty much, when Scholes was about to try and take it off him, and he pretty much
He's like, no, I'm taking this.
Yeah, bosh! I was just like,
Yeah.
my God.
Right across the front of the penalty box, and then just bosh.
It was
right
just,
across,
it was so un-England-esque.
Yeah, it was amazing,
Yeah, because normally it was like headers and Lineker getting on the end of it and tapping it in. I mean, Platt had some outrageous goals in his time,
did.
but
But that Michael Owen moment, it was like the you know, welcome to the stage, wasn't it? But 18 he was.
absolutely.
He was 18.
Well, I remember seeing him playing in the England schools on Sky
Right.
when he was about 15, because everybody was going on about him, and it was like where England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland would play against a tournament against each other, and it
Yeah.
was on Sky, and it was in like Bradford City Stadium with hardly anybody watching, and it was sponsored by Walker's Chris and all this. And I remember watching him playing, him getting man of the match, and and everyone was really waxing lyrical about Michael Owen.
Yeah. He
And
was probably like 16 or something.
Yeah, he was really young, and then 2 years later he
Yeah,
did
look
that,
at him.
and he was
Incredible.
just unbelievable. But I remember watching that game, and I was gutted when we lost. But it was every time Ariel Ortega got the ball for Argentina, I thought they're going to score. He just walked through everybody. It was unreal.
But it was always the way, wasn't it? Like, you know, England, Argentina. It was just, the rivalry was so huge, and it still is. It still is massive. I guess because of the Falklands, and political
absolutely.
climate and everything else. So
It's
But I think this new crop of England players, honestly,
the next level.
they are. I really think that, you know, we have every chance of winning something soon.
It feels like there's more of a unity in what they're doing. That whole kind of United Liverpool.
Oh yeah, that's all gone.
It's gone. But back
And
then,
I met them all at that particular moment. And, you know, this World Cup just gone, and I could see that they were really, really close.
right?
You know, they were getting on, they were making jokes with each other and
Yeah.
stuff, and just all hugging each other, and you know, it was a definite camaraderie. Well, they had just won 3-0, but like, you know,
Who were
that
they-
helped.
oh, it was against
It was Wales. It was
Wales,
a
yeah.
Wales game. Yeah, it was Gareth Bale's last game. Yeah.
Of course. So how did that come about then? With you getting invited to go over to Qatar and play? Did they just?
I just got the best manager in the world.
Right, right,
You know,
okay.
he was actually programming James, my new manager. Actually, we've only been working together for a year obviously now, and so it was just at the beginning of our relationship, and he was
Okay.
like, "I'm programming the entertainment for the World Cup, and you fancy going out and doing the halftime?" I was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Of course.
Yeah.
What a great experience.
Oh, it was amazing, and because it was such the way that it all happened was just like, you know, written in the stars, because the first half was 0-0. I don't know if you remember, it was 0-0.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a boring game. We're like, oh God, here we go again, bloody England. You know? And you know, half time, I came out, did my thing, which was amazing. 65,000 people singing along to it. That was an amazing moment.
Yeah.
And then the boys came out and they scored 3 goals like that straight away.
Wonderful.
So all the press picked up that it was like me that did it, or something. You know, I mean,
Amazing.
obviously it wasn't, but like.
Well, but the thing is, it wasn't. I don't think it was broadcast on telly. But when there were, there was a snippet of you starting.
I think Gary Lineker turned around and
Was
said, "Was that Chesney Hawkes?"
Yeah,
Or something like that.
absolutely. And then on Twitter, everyone was like, "What's Chesney Hawkes doing out there?" And it was great.
Yeah.
It was
then
kind of
like front page of the Sun the next day. It was mad. And so I was going to be coming home, and it was so crazy that it was like every media outlet in the country wanted to do something with me. It was mad. It's like back in 91 again, you know. And even Tyson Fury was like, I got to meet him, you know. So I flew back to meet Tyson Fury on the day before his flight. And it was just mad. It was just ridiculous, you know.
That's ridiculous.
Really fun though. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Is he as big as he looks? Is he massive?
He's massive. He's a big dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Tyson Fury. I like how he talks and how honest he is about.
He's raw.
He's raw.
I mean, and I met him just the day before a fight, so he was definitely in fight mode.
Okay. Was that against Wilder?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. I might be in Chisora. I can't remember, but he. Yeah, I like the way he kind of. There's a lot of emphasis when you're an artist or a sports person to get to the summit of the mountain. But when you get there, it's never as good as you think. You know, like I feel like that's why a lot of musicians turn to drugs. Because when you're on the road and people are like, oh, you're living the dream. But really, the dream is quite tough going. You're on a tour bus full of like roadies and people can get on your nerves. You're missing your home. You're not eating right. And as a result, to try and numb the kind of anxiety of like, well, I'm touring America or touring around the UK for months on end, I'm going to have some sort of medicine to kind of take the edge off and make me feel more special, because I feel like I should be enjoying this, but sometimes it's not enjoyable at all, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, there's obviously a lot of highs being on tour, being on the road, you know. It's like, it can be fun because you are with, you know, a kind of a camaraderie group of people, you know, and people that you've chosen. I was lucky enough to have my brother with me from early days. And,
which
you know,
is
we
great.
Had a lot of fun. You know, we were young, 19, 20 years old, just doing that, touring the world, you know, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's easy to want to kind of numb that kind of, it can be like lonely in a way out there.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
And you think,
and a lot of work, and especially for the lead singer or you know, the kind of front man of a band or a solo artist like myself.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do all the press, and you've got to be on all the time. You know, so like I always kind of felt a little bit jealous of the boys because they could just stay up all night drinking and they could have a lie-in, whereas I'd be up doing bloody This Morning or something.
And also, you can't really cane it too much as the singer, because if your voice goes...
No, that's true. You got to look after your voice. Yeah,
Yeah,
it always amazed me, like, you know, when you hear about these rock and rollers, like, you know, like Jim Morrison,
smoking like 40
just like,
a day.
Yeah, it's like doing drugs and like just going crazy and just like, and still manage to get out there and to give a performance. It's like,
I don't know. They did it. I once had I don't drink, but I once had a joint before I went on stage once, thinking, I'll see what it's like. Everybody goes on about it. It was horrendous.
Oh, it's the worst. There's nothing worse.
No,
I've done that myself. It's like, yeah, it's those are the kind of things that you do once or twice and then don't do it again.
Ever. Because you feel like a mug on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially, I mean, I forgot where we were.
Oh, God,
I was singing the wrong lyrics to the wrong songs, and I was embarrassed, actually. I was like, oh, and it wasn't like a big gig, but it was a lesson to make me go, I'd never want to feel like that on stage ever again.
I think there's a certain professionalism to fronting a band that you know that it's on you.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you fuck up, you know, you're letting everyone down.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I agree. It's and I also think if you're the guitarist or the drummer or the bassist, you can kind of eke through it a little bit.
Oh, you can, and they do, don't they?
Yeah,
bastards.
Yeah,
especially those bass players. You got to watch those bass players.
Yeah.
Especially the big hairy ones.
Yeah, well, just for anybody watching. So, Steve Jackson, who plays the bass guitar in my band Affleck's Palace, also plays bass guitar in Chesney's band, so that's why we kind of
we share Big Daddy Jackson.
Yeah. Shout out to Steve.
Yeah.
So going back to 91, like you the one and only came out off the back of Buddy's song, the film, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And you, how did? Like, what was the process in all that? Did you want to be an actor? Because did you want to be an actor? And did you audition for that part? And part of the package was you needed to be able to sing so you could do the soundtrack. How did it all kind of fall into place? Because it felt like the film came out and did all right, but then your song just went stratospheric and kind of the film got pushed to the side and you became this kind of... It was almost like nobody even connected the dots after a little bit, you know? How did it all come about?
So I was 17, something like that, and Roger Daltrey was on Good Morning Britain or one of those TV shows, like, and he was kind of like looking for a young boy that could possibly play his son, that could sing, that could play guitar, piano, and act, basically. And funny enough, when I saw that, I was in hospital. I'd just come out of having my wisdom teeth out,
right?
And so I had all these gauzes in my mouth, and I remember kind of like being still kind of like slightly dazed and confused. And I saw Roger there, and I was watching him, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. I couldn't talk, and I was like, I want to do that. So basically, I found myself at a open casting call, basically, hundreds of boys. It was like one of those kind of X Factor things,
right?
Where no TV, but it was like an audition thing where there was like just loads of boys going around the block, and I was just one of those lads, and it was a massive thing because I got called back after that, and then there was a load more auditions. And
was this in London?
Yes, the first one was in London, but there was quite a few. Then it kind of started to whittle down, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I had to do different things every time. First thing I think was I had to perform something and then do a couple of lines from the script or whatever.
Okay.
I'd never acted before in my life.
Right.
I was never an actor.
Right.
And it got whittled down and down. I think I did 4 auditions and did all these callbacks, and then eventually it was between me and this other kid called Cal, both 17, and we went to Bray Studios where the Who were rehearsing for one of their comeback tours or whatever.
Right.
Latest big tour. And I don't know if you've ever been to Bray Studios. It's like this massive warehouse, huge, so they can set up the whole kind of rolling stadium tour.
Okay, so you can set up, and they do that so they could sort out the lighting and kind of
everything.
So everything's on point. So when they roll into the venue, they've already rehearsed how the lights come on and etc. Right? Yeah. Sure.
It was totally one of those massive stage, and so Roger decided to do the audition stuff there while they're rehearsing with the Who. Okay. And so I did. The first thing I did was this really emotional scene with Roger, and as I said, never acted before, and it culminated with like he played my dad, and it culminated in him slapping me.
Right.
So it was quite an emotional, kind of fraught scene, And I just thought he was going to pretend to slap me. We didn't even practice it. And I because I'd never acted, I thought, well, he's going to pretend, I'm going to pretend to be slapped. No, he fucking walloped me. And it was like proper tears. Like I was shocked, you know what I mean?
Course.
So like there was like actual tears, and I think that's probably why I got the part. I wasn't acting. It was like, fucking hell, Roger Daltrey, I just got hit by a rock star. And and then the other part of it was I had to perform a song on the stage where the Who had set up.
Okay.
And so down on the floor of the warehouse, it was massively up in the air. And on the floor was Roger and all of the kind of film producers and the director and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I got up there and I was doing, I'll never forget, I was doing Elvis's "Well, That's All Right, Mama." And I wasn't really a guitar player at that point. I was very much a piano player from a very early age.
Right.
And I dabbled, but my dad showed me how to play the chords of "That's All Right, Mama." It's only like C, F, and G, I think, but and so I was doing it, and I looked up, and behind Roger, like leaning on the wall at the back with his arms crossed with that kind of "go on, impress me, boy" look on his face, was Pete Townsend.
Oh, really?
So I looked down at my guitar and I was like, "Oh, what is this thing?" And
yeah, of course.
Like one of the greatest guitar players in the world is just watching me fiddle around on this thing.
Scuff it up a bit.
Oh, just fuck it up. Don't totally fluff it up, And so I'm doing the thing, and I'm kind of just trying to get through it. And I noticed Roger started to walk towards the stage. And I was like, what's he doing? And I'll just keep going, "Well, that's all right, Mama." And he walked up and he's walking up the steps, and he walked up the steps and he's coming all the way over to me. I was like, shit, what's he doing? And he just came over to me and he grabbed my leg like that. "Stop moving your fucking leg," he said.
What?
I was like, what's going on? I can't take any more. So I was a 17-year-old kid, you know what I mean? So, And I guess I just thought I'd screwed it all up, you know what I mean? And,
Right.
But I didn't. Obviously, the next week I was told I got the part, and that was how that came about. And I only really went up for that audition because I knew I would be playing a young singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
So it was a very musical based film.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe there's that elusive record deal at the end of it.
Sure.
Because, in those days it was difficult. You had to get it, you had to, really, really sell your wares. I remember sending cassettes out when I was 15, 16, of my demos and stuff like that. And of course it's damn near impossible,
Well, they were the gatekeepers to having music even released.
That's it. Now these days you can just put yourself on Spotify and you're done.
It's out, yeah.
It's out, and social media's changed all of that stuff. But in those days it really was about you could do gigs, and I did. I started playing live when I was 13, so I was already out there doing stuff. But you got to get those people down to your gig. And if you're playing like the Dog and Duck in fucking where, who knows where you are, then it's rare to get someone to come out.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and your dad was in the Tremolos, right?
Yeah.
And I presume that your formative years were surrounded by music, and kind of you were encouraged by your dad to kind of play a bit of piano, and you wanted to kind of, I don't know, engage with your dad and on that music level because of that's what he did, I presume. I always thought, but like just from an outsider's point of view, I presumed that your dad had known somebody who'd put you forward for it, and
but my dad's not very much. He's not like that. He's like I remember when I was 16 or 15, 16, I was I left school, and my dad was like, "What do you want to do? What are you going to do?" He knew very well I was going to say, well, I'm going to try and make it in music, you know. And he said, well, all right, but if you're not making money in music by the end of the summer, then you're going to go to college or something.
Okay.
And he didn't, he helped a little bit, but he made me do it on myself, And I remember lugging the keyboards to local pubs and things like that. And, it was very much kind of, I did it myself. Yeah. I mean, obviously he had some contacts here and there, but, that's not his style.
No.
He comes from a very working class background, my dad.
He's from Dagenham, isn't he?
Actually, he's from Shepherd's Bush.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the rest of the Tremolos are from Dagenham.
Right. I thought that's why you might support West Ham, actually.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. My dad was a QPR fan.
Ah!
Yeah. But he never took us to games, me and my bro. So we had a friend who was friend of the family who had season ticket to West Ham. Shout out to Roger Crouch.
Nice.
And he took me and my bro to the first game we ever went to was Spurs away, and we lost 5-0. And I remember seeing the West Ham fans doing the okey cokey up and down the aisles, and I was like, these are my people.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. And you can't change your football team once you.
No.
You can change everything else in your life, can't you?
Yeah.
But your wife, your sex.
Yeah, but you can't change who you support.
Football. It's just not cricket.
No.
So I've lost my train of thought.
No, but so it wasn't your father who kind of encouraged you to go to that open audition. You'd seen it on the telly and you'd gone and you'd got the audition. Once you were secured in that, you'd been told that was that you'd got the job for acting. How did it all come to bear fruit? Did you work with Nik Kershaw on any of that? Because Nik Kershaw wrote
The One and Only,
and I believe it was recorded. This is just what I've read online, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it was recorded at Abbey Road, and it was one of the producers of the film who co-wrote some of the songs for the soundtrack. Was it, when you were working on that music, were you brought in just to record the vocals and everything was recorded, or were you part of the writing process? How did it come to fruition?
I was very much part of everything.
Right.
And even when I got the part, they gave me a bunch of lyrics, because all of the lyrics from the Buddy song soundtrack were written by Nigel Hinton, who wrote the book and the screenplay.
Right.
So he wrote them as Buddy would write them.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was given a bunch of lyrics, and I wrote a load of songs myself. And in fact, I ended up getting 3 songs on the album, which for a 17-year-old kid wasn't too shabby.
It's outrageous.
I'm still actually quite proud of that, actually,
Yeah.
And of course there are other songwriters, a guy called John Wesley Harding, who's fantastic, an artist in his own right and very successful now. And so we did a little bit of writing together, and he had some songs as well, which were great. So the soundtrack, the actual music for the film was recorded before we made the film.
Okay.
At Abbey Road, as a young band. We actually had good musicians, but we played it live, and it was all a bit scrappy. And we did it scrappy because we were supposed to be a young band.
And this was before you started filming.
This is even before the
So
film.
you had the part. You've been given the part, and then they said, we want you to write a bunch of songs. You went into Abbey Road to record the songs,
it's
which
mad,
is
isn't it?
outrageous.
It's ridiculous. I know.
And then you started filming.
So we spent 3 months in Abbey Road recording the film music, the music for the film, which is like the stuff that we played. I sung live.
Right.
And it's actually the first time that had ever been done in English cinema.
Wow.
Where all in any kind of musical sense wise,
When you say you sung live, do you mean with the band?
No, see, the band was recorded at Abbey Road.
Okay.
So that was kind of, they were miming, but I was singing live.
Okay.
And that was Roger's insistence.
Do you mean in the film?
In the film. So every time you see me singing on screen in Buddy's song, I'm singing that live.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is no mean feat, because you do it, you have to do it like fucking 100 times when you're doing a scene, and different angles and everything, and you have to do it exactly the same, and you have to keep your voice in check.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so that was tough. The only time that ever been done before in any film was Coal Miner's Daughter.
Right.
Yeah. So it's probably been done since now, I would think. But
so they would play back on a speaker or whatever.
Yeah, we had monitors. It was just like playing with the band.
Yeah,
and of course you had a band around you, and they were all musicians actually, the band. Right. Anyway, everyone could play. We made sure of that, But except for Paul McKenzie, who's my best mate now, and was playing my best mate then, and they had him on the keyboards, and I look at him now, he's playing like this,
Amazing.
It was hilarious. It's
like one of the Muppets,
it was
Ralph Malph or something. Yeah,
it really was. So we always take the piss out of him now and seeing the old footage, because he did Top of the Pops with us and everything.
Amazing.
And he's doing this on the keyboard.
Fantastic. And that's how people think the keys are played, as a result of that miming.
So funny.
So you went into the studio.
Nik Kershaw. You asked about Nik. So that was the music for the film, and then I went and then we filmed the film and everything else, and then that was 4 or 5 months on the film, and then we went back into Abbey Road for another 3 months to record the soundtrack.
Okay.
So we took some of the elements from the film, recordings, and added to them. And at the time, I remember the record company were really happy with the soundtrack, and it was all the songs from the film, very much kind of like specifically all the songs that were made for the film, if you see what I mean. It was very much like an insular kind of project, And then the record company were like, maybe there's a couple of outside songs we could think about, Right.
This is Chrysalis, isn't it?
Chrysalis Records, yeah, exactly. So, Chris Wright and Paul Conroy. And so it got put, because it was it wasn't a major label, but they were a big label.
Massive.
Chrysalis were a big label. They had Blondie, they had World Party at the time. Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
Lots of amazing artists and with real heritage, And so back in those days, there was a thing called the Who's Wanting list.
All right, okay.
And it's for record labels that have artists that need songs.
Okay.
Right, so it gets put out to the machine, and there are, especially in those days, there were professional songwriters like Diane Warren and Desmond Child, people like that. They were huge. Like Desmond Child would write for like Bon Jovi and
almost like a gun for hire kind of thing for songs.
And all of there were certain people like Diane Warren. Oh my God, if you look up Diane Warren, the songs that she's written for like Starship and people like that, like incredible, a little bit kind of generically written in a way, but they were genius songs, and she was
absolutely.
a genius. And so people like that, and lots of other people got kind of would have had me come up on their Who's Looking list,
right?
And so lots of songs came in. But my dad knew this guy called Stuart Newton, who used to be at Warner Chappell Music.
Right.
And he had Nik Kershaw on his roster as a writer.
Okay.
He published Nik Kershaw, and so my dad went to lunch with him at one point, and Stuart put on this cassette, said, "What do you think of this?" And it was a demo of Nik, and The One and Only was one of the songs.
Right.
And my dad was like, "Oh, that's got to be Nik Kershaw, isn't it? Chesney will be pleased. Is that a new Nik Kershaw album?" And so Stuart was like, "Actually, it is Nik, obviously, very recognisable voice and everything. But Nik is taking a break from being an artist and wants to kind of concentrate for now on writing for others."
Right.
So all these songs are available. So my dad brought me the cassette of these Nik Kershaw demos, and there must have been 15 of songs, all great. And I've still got it, and there's an asterisk that I'd put beside The One and Only.
Right.
And another song called Oxygen.
Right.
And then another song called I'm in Love with My TV.
Ah.
So I ended up recording The One and Only, obviously.
Yeah.
And Jason Donovan took Oxygen.
Right.
And Cliff Richard took I'm in Love
Really?
with My TV. Yeah.
Wow.
I think I took the right one, to
You
be
did.
honest. They were all good songs, as I said. Obviously, Nick's a bloody genius. And I've been a Nik fan since I was, 14 when Human Racing came out. So I was huge fan. And, you could literally pinch me, 3 or 4 years after that. I actually got to meet him and work with him. It was,
Right.
it was incredible. But when we first took the song to the team, and as I said, there was a massive production team, including all the guys from the film, director from the film, the producers, Roger, all the record company, my management. I mean, it was all too many cooks in a way. And we took that song. Well, I remember we played it. We were at Studio 3, Abbey Road, put it on, everyone was there, and it kind of went down like a wet balloon in a way. I loved it. But I was kind of more thinking, I want to do it because I want to meet Nik Kershaw.
Yeah, of course. Was the demo as polished as the final version? Like, was there what was the difference between the demo version and the final version?
Yeah, that's a good question, and not a lot, I have to say.
Okay.
Obviously, the final version was more polished because we ended up recording it at Abbey Road, and we added all sorts of things to it. But if you listen to the demo. It's pretty similar.
Okay.
Nik came into the studio and brought his session with him.
Okay.
And we just kind of took all the tracks from his demo, and then we worked from that.
Had he already recorded all the guitar parts, all those solo-y kind of bits?
He redid the solo.
Okay.
Redid guitar parts as well.
Did he do all the guitars on that recording?
Yeah, he did.
Because it's great.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a track that Bryan Adams wished he'd written.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of almost like pop, soft rock kind of anthemic.
Yeah. But it's too complicated for a Bryan Adams song.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's in 4 different keys, classic Kershaw.
Oh yeah, well there you go.
Yeah.
But I just think from a production.
No, I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
I totally get it,
it's kind of. But it just seems to have lasted the test of time, because whenever anybody when you listen to other tracks of that ilk from that era, it feels. To say dated feels a bit harsh, but it feels of its time.
Yeah.
Whereas when I listen to that recording, because I love that song, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't feel. It feels quite. I don't know. Not modern, but it doesn't feel
got a
like
freshness to it.
It's aged very well.
Yeah.
It's like a classic car shape from the where you're like, oh my gosh, it's. It feels, like you said, fresh.
It's funny, isn't it? With certain records, and The One and Only, I'm lucky enough, obviously, to have something like that in as part of my career. I feel like I always call it like a song with wings, because after those days, obviously we had success and everything else, and then I had years where I kind of rebelled against it in a way, and I didn't play it for maybe 10 years.
Wow.
And really kind of fell out of love with it, and just kind of anyone, Radiohead were huge at the time, and I was a massive Radiohead fan, still am. Who isn't?
Yeah, of course.
I just wanted to be in Radiohead, and I spent that time, I formed a band, my brother was in the band as well, and we had Gary Nuttall, who's my old guitar player, who's now Robbie's guitar player,
right?
In the band, and we would shoegaze and turn up to 11, and if anyone asks, shouted out One and Only, I'd tell them to piss off, you know.
Yeah.
But
that it's kind of, it almost feels like you're trying to develop as an artist, and your tastes change, and also fashions change. What's on vogue at one point won't be the next. I mean, you just have to look at haircuts from the noughties.
Yeah.
You know, where people have like bleach blonde mullets and they look insane. And,
well, I'm looking at my bloody hair from the early days.
Well, do you know what? I think it still looks cool, like that leather jacket. Do you know that leather jacket you're wearing on the cover?
Yeah.
I was in Reykjavik at a vintage clothes.
I love Iceland, man.
Oh, it's amazing.
We could talk Iceland for days.
Oh, we could, yeah. Reykjavik, it's unbelievable. But this jacket was in. There was like a lumberjack kind of plaid, kind of red and black check jacket, and there was this like almost like a Michael L. Jackson-esque jacket that you wore, that kind of biker jacket.
Yeah.
And the biker jacket was a perfect fit, and so was the other one. And I looked in the mirror, and I looked like a complete twat. I looked at myself in that. Like, you pulled it off. You look great, but I look like an absolute moron.
I've still got that jacket.
Have you?
Yeah, it still fits. Yeah.
Fab. Oh, I love that.
I know, it's mad. Yeah, we did a vinyl release of the One and Only recently, where we included the original. And it was like 30 years since type of thing.
Okay.
And so on one side was the original, and then the B side we had a kind of a new Nik Kershaw did a revamp of the production. He redid the solo, he did a new mix and everything, and it sounds fucking amazing. It's great. And so I did a photo session with that jacket on.
Amazing.
So on the front is me in 91 with the crazy floppy hair, and you turn it over and it's me now with the same jacket on.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I had to do it. But going back to what you're saying about the One and Only, you know, and the fact that I'd fallen out of love with it for years, but when I came back to kind of, because I didn't even perform as me for a long time.
Bro.
Not at all. I did band names, crazy band names and stuff. And then eventually I got offered a gig, and it was a student union gig, and this was 10 years after the One and Only. And I was really skeptical about doing it, because I just thought, well, these kids would have been like 9 years old when it came out. No one's going to remember that. No one's going to remember the One and Only. No one's going to remember me, you know. But actually, quite the opposite. What I didn't realise what had happened is over the years it had become a student anthem.
Right.
It had become a kind of like a classic cult record in a way.
Yeah.
You know, been handed down like some kind of mantle. And so that's what I mean about A Song with Wings. It like that record kind of had its own life. And, you know, I always say these days that like I've kind of given up ownership of that record because it belongs to people that have some kind of connection to it.
Yeah.
And there's lots of records and artists like, you know, that I love that I feel the same way about. You know, it's like, that's a little bit of me there.
Yeah.
It's a bit of my life.
And it's
you know?
soundtracked a certain moment that completely takes you back to in a heartbeat.
Sure. And you can imagine that like over the years I've had like, you know, messages and emails and whatever from so many different people about the song, you know, just like what it means to them, what it means to them, and where it fits in their life. Like, you know, it was the first song it was playing when I met my wife, or it was playing at my dad's funeral, or, you know, or my brother's first dance at his wedding, or so, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Just, it's like that's nothing. That side of it is nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, you must have the same thing with your fans.
Well, with Affleck's, I mean, we haven't got a song that's transcended so many people's lives. We definitely have people coming to us saying wonderful, very, very kind things about what our songs mean to them, and that's great and everything.
It's the beauty of music.
It is, and it's kind of, it's almost when people tell you these stories about certain songs, it almost feels like. For me personally, like I have it sounds a bit cold, but a detachment. When they're telling me, it's like I don't necessarily, I can't even visualize what you're telling me is in like for you. It's of this vibrant, like when I listen to the One and Only, it takes me back to being in the car with my dad and it coming on the radio as a young kid and seeing you in the leather jacket, and just because it was before I started doing anything to do with music.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember seeing it just thinking, I love how it sounds. It's so energetic and uplifting, and it was great. And it just reminds me of a time, you know, I mean, my dad passed away when I was quite young, but when I was with him and and with my mum, and when the world felt fresh and there was no cynicism.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so true though. That
Yeah.
I think that's true. I mean, it seems true maybe because we were more innocent and when we were younger and we weren't exposed to a lot of the kind of shit that really is in the world.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It might be a bit to do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when The One and Only came out, like, did you go out on? Because, I mean, just from what when I spoken to Steve about it, he was saying that you were like doing MTV things in like Germany and America, and you were kind of. Was there a relentless touring schedule around it? On what was the moment where it felt like? Was there a moment where it felt like it really took off?
Yeah, back when it was first released, I had no idea what was coming.
Okay.
I had absolutely no idea. But of course, being a precocious 19-year-old kid, and also I'd grown up with fame around me, so I kind of, it was almost like, it's a weird thing to say, I know, but it almost felt like, okay, it's my turn, it's my time.
Okay.
So I had that kind of mentality, and I think that's actually one of the reasons that I did quite well in a way, because I had this confidence that, sometimes I guess chipped away as you get older, you know what it is?
Yeah. Well, it's youthful confidence.
When dreams die,
Yeah. Yeah.
But back then I was just like full of it, and very precocious, and I think that held me in good stead, and so literally I started promoting the record, and Roger was coming around with us promoting as well. So I was instantly doing Saturday Superstore and doing all these shows and stuff. And then it started, and as you said before, like it was promoting the film. Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. And the record was kind of like secondary in a way. I was just kind of like, he was introducing me as his co-star.
Okay.
And then of course the One and Only just went, it just went meteoric. So it's funny that even the packaging of the film changed. It was like Roger Daltrey in Buddy Song introducing Chesney Hawkes with little down the bottom, to the one and only Chesney Hawkes in Buddy Song with Roger Daltrey.
Yeah.
So it was quite funny how that happened, and it was literally within weeks. And I remember I was doing so the record nearly didn't make it because back in the old days with the charts, you used to get this thing called the midweeks. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
So just for those of your listeners that don't know, basically in the middle of the week, you used to get what they were called the midweek predictions to the charts. And it really was a prediction based on the sales that had happened the first 3 days of the week.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So they would predict where the records would be. So I think the One and Only was about number 70, 80, something like that.
Right.
And they were hoping that it would come into the top 40. And the midweek prediction that week on the Wednesday was like 150. Yeah, it was dead. And if that happened to a record in those days, it's dead. Yeah, and they just, okay, next, move on.
Yeah.
So that happened in the midweek. And then on the Saturday, we did the Little and Large show.
Little and Large.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Sid Little and Eddie Large. And it was just a performance. But back then, that was the biggest cabaret, Saturday night show, and everyone watched it. Your grandmas watched it. Your dad and mum watched it. And the kids watched it because it was silly. And so we did a performance on that, and it put it in the top 40. That's what did it. Yeah, wow. So I've got a lot to thank Little and Large for, man.
That's hilarious.
I've got a career to thank, and I did MasterChef a few years ago, Celebrity MasterChef, and Sid Little was on it.
Right.
And I went and found him, and I was like, mate, I have a story to tell you. I was like, I have my career to thank you for. And he's like, oh, well, that's amazing. Well, you're very welcome, Mr. Hawkes.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So you feel that was the turning point? It wasn't like a radio playlist. It was like that was
what did it for me.
Lit the flame.
But of course, there were lots of other things as well. Radio 1 did pick it up. They definitely did. So they were playing it, and I still remember that first time, hearing it in the radio. I mean, it was just like, wow, it's just amazing, And then of course, when it came in the top 40, Top of the Pops came knocking.
Right.
So that's when you think, oh, okay, this is real now. And
Did you mime for that one? Was it,
yeah,
is it just,
everyone bloody mimed on top of the
yeah.
pops. It was just
So I
one
was
of
just
those
wondering
things.
how stressful it was for you, like when you were on there.
Yeah,
because
no one wanted to, you know.
No, but you had to.
But you had to. There was no way of doing it. Back in the early days, they never mimed.
No.
It was, you know, everyone was playing live. But yeah, so I remember Edie Reader from Fairground Attraction. Do you remember that band?
I don't, but
she did that song. You got to be.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, what a tune.
So she didn't want to do it miming wise, you know. So she came out with a satsuma, and just she didn't even sing. She's like giving people in the audience like bits of set. I just remember that moment thinking, sorry, I'm moving the mic.
Sorry.
That's a really good kind of way to complain that you don't want to, you know,
to show people that you're not on board with it.
You're not going to do it, you know.
Well, Kurt Cobain did that after. Do you remember?
Oh yeah,
when he was
Cobain,
kind of like
classic.
just throw it. Yeah, well, Nirvana.
Oh, I love Nirvana, man. I see. I met those guys. Well, kind of. It was in the same kind of, because 91 was when Nevermind came out.
Yeah.
And back in those days, you used to do like TV shows where you'd review the week's singles.
Right.
Do you remember you used to see, you know, or not just on TV. You used to do it like for smash hits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that for the first time on a TV show, listening to It Smells Like Teen Spirit, and I was like, shit, that sounds different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something's changing here with that, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember absolutely falling in love with that band, and especially that record, you know, just absolutely changed everything. And actually, you know, kind of pushed people like me out of the way, really.
Well, yeah,
you know, and also like hair bands at the time all disappeared, and it was like that was the beginning of a new era of rock music.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. They just kind of bulldozed everything and went, we're here. And it was because he didn't really want to be there anyway.
Well, no, he didn't subscribe to that fame thing. I remember watching him on MTV being interviewed about. Do you remember that band Extreme?
Yeah, I did a tour with them.
Really?
Yeah, I got to know him, Nuno Betancourt. And
Nuno Betancourt. When was that?
I did a tour with Bryan Adams and Extreme. So it was me, Bryan Adams, and Extreme. That was a stadium tour around Europe.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
Well, 92, the reason why 93. I said it is because Kurt Cobain was saying that they were all prima donnas, and when they'd phone the press and say, we're going to be coming through this airport, and then they'd be like, no cameras.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no cameras. We're not into that, you know, this rock star kind of...
The funny thing about that band, as always makes me laugh, is that they were a proper rock band.
Yeah.
Like really kind of almost a heavy metal band in a way.
Yeah.
And Nuno was like very much known for being probably the best shredder in the world at the time, like ridiculous guitar player.
Yeah, dexterity off the chart.
Exactly. And they were an underground band for years. And of course, you know, that kind of music, it has an underground following, you know, and people knew them for that. And then of course they put out More Than Words, which is this little picky acoustic ballad.
Yeah.
And of course it just blows up. And I mean, it just makes me laugh that, you know, that's not what they were.
No.
You know, that was the only thing that they ever did that was like that. You know, and that's all they're known for.
Well, they put out that when I was really little, I was listening to they had an album called Pornograffiti too.
Yeah.
And that's what that song was on.
It's so funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
This pretty little... Yeah. Dainty. You know.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people listen to that and think it's a love song, but it's all about just trying to get a bird to shag you. More Than Words.
Isn't that what most songs are about?
Well, yeah, kind of, yeah. But More Than Words is all you have to do to make it real.
Yeah.
But I went to watch Extreme just as a bit of a nostalgia trip when they reformed and they were played at Leeds Academy, and the thing is, I mean, it was quite empty.
It was.
And they came out on stage and they had all the amps, and Gary Sharon, the singer, was like wearing like spandex trousers and like mincing around the stage.
Yeah.
And the amps just didn't turn on. So he's kind of like doing all these poses, and Nuno's like fucking like kicking the shit out of his amp on this, and it was all a bit fucking Spinal Tap. And then they all just walked off stage, and then they had to walk back on stage, and it was all a bit shit. Like, you know, mate, bless them.
Very Spinal Tap.
It was so Spinal Tap.
Because, you know, with the fact that they're kind of a metal band and like the spandex and their long hair
and they
probably still got that, you know, little bit of a guy liner maybe.
Yeah, and they've still got this kind of rock star, like it feels your persona, you know, like giving it this kind
especially
of
that American thing, like
absolutely.
So you know, Spinal Tap making a new film, don't you?
No way.
Yeah. All the original cast reformed to make a new film. It's happening.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Nor can I.
Nigel Tufnell.
I know.
Yeah.
I always say to any musicians that I meet, like if mention Spinal Tap, I'm like, wait, have you seen Spinal Tap? Because if you haven't seen Spinal Tap, you're not actually a musician yet.
Yeah.
You can't call yourself a musician until you've seen Spinal Tap.
It just rings true to sort of like so many, you know, people that you bump into on the road who take themselves quite seriously,
That's
but
hilarious.
you just think, you just fuck off, you know.
Yeah, it's so
it's
funny.
just ridiculous, you know.
We've all got those stories, haven't we, Jay?
Yeah.
We meet people along the way that are just like, just a little bit spinal.
Yeah, whereas like Shark Sandwich gave a 2-word review of this album. Shit sandwich. It's like, they can't write that, can they?
Oh mate, there's so many classic lines from that film. It's just like,
It's a brilliant film.
It's like a musician's Bible. You have to see it.
It absolutely
That and
is.
Bad News. That I think Spinal Tap takes it for me.
Yeah. When's it? Is it due out?
I don't know the timing of it, but a friend of mine who's worked with those guys for forever. He's basically their producer, so he's working on it now. I couldn't give you a date, but it's happening. I mean, I can't imagine what they're doing now with it. You know what I mean? Because they're obviously like proper aging rock stars at this point. You know?
Was it David St Hubbins, the singer?
Yeah, David St Hubbins, Nigel Tufnell,
on lead guitar.
Derek Smalls.
Yeah, who was Harry Shearer?
Who's Harry Shearer? Who I've played with.
Really?
I was his guitar player for a little bit.
Wow, because he did the voices in Simpsons.
Yeah.
What characters did he voice?
He did Ned Flanders. Well, there's quite a few of them actually.
Yeah.
He did the Willie, the janitor.
The Scottish janitor.
Yeah, the Scottish guy. He does Mr. Burns.
Wow.
Yeah. There's quite a few actually.
Did you ever ask him to do any of the voices whilst you were on tour with him?
Didn't have to ask him.
Oh, really? He just does them?
No, he's lovely. He's a really lovely guy, actually. Yeah. And I didn't. It's a bit disingenuous saying I was a guitar player. I did 2 gigs with him, and the Conan O'Brien show.
Right.
And with it was actually me and the band. The band was actually an amazing band, like proper LA cats, you know, CJ Vanson on keyboard, and I mean Lee Scalar, the bass player, who's, if you look him up, my God, just unbelievable, like the amount of people play with him. But also Fountains of Wayne were playing with us. So we had them in the band. So it was like a big old band, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was it for? Like, was Harry,
Harry was doing, he had a single out, and it was called Celebrity Booze Endorser. And it was just like a comedy thing, you know, and he was just putting out. And
under his own name, was it?
Yeah, under his own name. And, you know, he had an album, so we were just, you know, the gig was fun. And we just did, you know.
When was that? And how did
this would have been 2013.
Oh,
quite recently. And it was through my friend CJ Vanston, who's the keyboard player. I mean, he's played and written with and worked with people like Joe Cocker and Tina Turner. And I mean, he's a legendary LA, you know, cat, should we say. And so we've written songs together in the past, and he was like, I think you should come in on this. We should come in on this. They need a guitar player and a singer, someone who can do good backing vocals. He's like, I think you could do this. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was so fun. Really
That
fun.
is fun. So, I mean, you toured with Bryan Adams and Extreme. Were there any other tour supports that you went on, and how were those shows? And did you then go on to your own tours? What sort of size venues were you playing at the height of your pomp? Because the venue, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
That's all right.
But one of the videos, because you did 3 videos for One and Only.
Yeah.
And one of which, was it filmed at Brixton Academy?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw that, because I love seeing old music videos where I was like, that's Brixton Academy.
I know that place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, were you, did you have any more tour supports, and where were the venues you were playing?
Yeah, I played with, one of my favourites was I did an arena tour with Huey Lewis.
And the News?
Yeah. Huey Lewis and the News. They were so fun. That was some of the best touring ever. That was so fun. Because I was talking about the Bryan Adams and Extreme one. Like Extreme and my band got on really well, and we would, you know, end up in the pub together and stuff like that. It was great. They were really nice people.
Yeah.
But Bryan Adams was just kind of a bit elusive.
Right.
He would kind of come in, we'd done our bit, and he'd come in, go straight on stage, do his thing, and then fuck off.
Right.
And he never really even, I've met him, but he never really kind of paid attention to us.
Right.
But Huey Lewis was the total opposite to that. Him and the band was so great. I mean, back then they were older then. They were in their 40s even then, you know, and so we were all in our early 20s. Like, in fact, I was probably earlier than that. I'm like 19. And
what's their biggest tunes? It's just
hip to be square.
Yeah,
the Power of Love.
Power of Love. That's it. Yeah.
Fantastic songs, like real classic pop rock stuff, But he was the one that I remember. I mean, I've had great mentors in my life, and I'm talking, go from Roger Daltrey to Nik Kershaw to my dad to Huey Lewis was brilliant. He took me aside once after a gig, and he's like, "Listen, kid, I can see that you're good and you're young and you're having success at the moment, and it's like, I just want to give you the piece of advice that I wish I had when I was your age."
Yeah.
And we were sitting there with it was in Germany, we were having a couple of beers,
Yeah.
And he said, "Never stop playing live."
Right.
He said, because some people do.
Yeah.
Some people just stop that part of it.
Right.
And he's like, it can be tough sometimes, but the thing is, that's where you learn your craft.
Yeah.
That's it, and if you stop that, then you lose your connection with your audience.
Yeah.
So I did that. I stuck to that, because I always hear his voice in my head.
Yeah.
It's
It's nice because, I mean, obviously with Huey Lewis in the News being used on Back to the Future.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that song off the back of Back to the Future and that franchise, huge. I just remember how cool it was hearing on, Back to the
Yeah,
oh my God, I love that.
Great sounding records.
Yeah,
and he's one of those people that I think has a hit voice.
Yeah.
It's like there's some people that have that, it's like obviously Bryan Adams has that, Huey Lewis has that. I'd say, Peter Cox from Go West has that. It's just got that voice that's just, no matter what you put it on, it sounds like a hit.
Okay. Yeah, Gold Dust.
Yeah, Rod Stewart, Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
I'm saying all the kind of husky people, aren't they? But,
But no, I know what you mean. There are some people that just have a very distinct voice that just seems to cut through and give songs.
Also, not just the cutting through. I agree with you on that, but it's also sounds good with guitars or sounds good with on the record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It fits in. It's like it's part. The voice is like part of the sound. Of the band.
Like one big chord.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing. It's part of. Yeah. I agree. So then what were the biggest venues you played on tour after that? When you started doing your own touring?
Yeah. I played the odd arena here and there. But
was there one show that the peak where that was it?
Yeah, for me, back in '91, when I headlined Hammersmith Odeon, obviously the Apollo.
The Apollo, wow.
But because I'd seen people there, and I kind of obviously knew about the Hammersmith Odeon as being an iconic venue, David Bowie and Blondie and all
Clash
these Clash, and obviously everyone's played there over the years. I mean, it's literally everyone, isn't it? So I always wanted to play there. And then selling it out. And I remember going outside and taking a picture of the, Chesney Hawkes across there with the sold out across Hammersmith Odeon. And I was like, wow, that for me was one of those, another kind of milestone for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a great moment.
Yeah.
I remember, so I many moons ago, I was a solo artist and I was being courted by a few major labels and things like that. And somebody said to me, it was the president of Island Records, actually. He said, where do you want to be as an artist? What do you see as being success? And I said, I can't really imagine becoming more successful than selling out Hammersmith Apollo.
That's great.
That's the ceiling of my...
Yeah.
But if I ever got to that level, I don't think that would be as successful as I can ever imagine becoming and being able to do it. I've never got there, but I did support Razorlight at Hammersmith Apollo.
Brilliant. So you played there.
Yeah, we played there and that was sold out, and that was every other show on the tour with Razorlight felt special, but the venues when you got on stage didn't feel quite as it wasn't as overwhelming. Like we were playing, like even when we played Barrowlands and we played Olympia in Dublin and we played all these iconic venues, but when I got on stage, I didn't feel like it. Oh my God, I didn't feel out of my depth at all. When I got on stage at Hammersmith Apollo, I was like, this is a barn.
Yeah,
this is
amazing.
massive.
And I love the way it feels because you feel very enclosed because it's like they're literally they're all there,
yeah.
They're all there, and they're all there.
Yeah.
There's that real kind of like it is like a barn, but it's also intimate.
Well, it is, and it's got a great sound. I saw Tom Waits play there.
Oh wow, amazing.
It was his first gig in I think it was like 17 or 18 years, and he's never been back.
Oh wow.
And I got tickets for it, and I went, and I remember he came out. The album he was promoting was the Real Gone album, which I loved, and he came out and he kind of waved to the crowd, and then after about 2 or 3 songs, I'll never forget this. He goes, "Hey England, it's been 17 years, but you look good. It's like there's 3 stages of life: youth, middle age, and you look good."
That's really good.
Yeah,
line.
and everyone's like,
That's a great line.
It was really, really good. He was just so charismatic, and it's a shame he never came back, but I'm so glad I got to see him at that venue because the sound was next level.
That's another
And they'd
thing.
set the band up
great,
really tight in the middle of the stage. He didn't have a big stage set up. It wasn't like big amps. He set like 5 or 6 musicians round in a little jazz club circle and just did it.
So it was just plug and play. Just
brilliant.
I love that. Yeah, not too much of a flashy show. Just,
absolutely.
Yeah, I have a gig coming up next year on 31st of May at the Kentish Town Forum.
Oh right, great.
Yeah, so that's a similar kind of thing for me. Like, you know, it's like, I mean, that's going to be a massive gig, that one. I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
So
you should come, man.
Is that a headline show?
Yeah, headline. Yeah,
right. Kentish Town Forum's great. I saw Idols play there.
Yeah.
And it's great because the Bull and Gate used to be next to that as a venue.
Played there as well.
Yeah, and but that's long gone. But
Yeah.
PJ Harvey played there, and loads of artists played at the Bull and Gate. But
love all those old venues like the Camden Underworld. And
Underworld.
Yeah.
Done
that one a few times.
I once went to watch a band. Have you ever heard of a band called Skindred?
No.
They're like a reggae metal band I think they're from Newport in Wales, and they got this really cool singer called Benji. And I remember going to watch them, and they're pretty heavy. And he kind of sings with a patois accent, and it's kind of like, it's really interesting music. Yeah. And I stood there, and Chris Evans was stood next to me from like the Big Breakfast. I was just stood next to him, and I looked at him, I was like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Well, he's a massive music fan, man.
Yeah.
He's really up with new trends and like, and he's a real music buff.
Well, he must be.
Yeah, he really is.
Because I just thought because he's of his radio show and he's kind of like plays a bit more commercial stuff, and because he's so successful, and like with the TFI Friday, a lot of the stuff he pushed was kind of like major label stuff, and I actually thought it was his brother in the band playing guitar, and that's why he was there, because the guy on guitar was Ginger, and I thought, oh, that must be his brother, but I don't think it was. He was
he's probably just a fan. He probably just knows him. Yeah,
fair play to him.
Chris Smalls is another one like that. He loves his music.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember he pissed a lot of people off recently by saying that most unsigned music is shit, and the thing is, like, I understand what he said. People think he was just kind of being, I don't know,
facetious.
Yeah, and a bit kind of contrary, and just like being a bit dismissive. But in actual fact, I think if he'd have worded it differently, it was a throwaway comment. Yeah. But the fact is, I mean, with my record label, I get a lot of people sending me very undeveloped recordings.
You've got to be able to see through it, haven't you?
Well,
see the potential.
Well, you can see the potential, but there's also a lot of potential where it's like, you're not ready yet.
Mm-hmm, you're not there yet.
Yeah. So if you then send this onto radio, they're going to think it's shit. I mean, I've had conversations with major label people who, if you played them a demo of Wonderwall, they'd be like, sounds dreadful.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And I'm like, but you're in the music industry. It's your eye. You need to see the vision and the potential.
Got to hear the song.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
because this is where it starts, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If you don't have the song, you don't have anything.
That's right. But even then, some people. I mean, a friend of mine signed to RCA and sent the head of the label,
who's basically just a guy in a suit who's
course,
ruthless. He sent him all the demos going, I'm really excited about signing to you.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he's like, and his manager was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
We only send him the finished article.
Exactly.
He won't get it, and he'll just
No.
pull the plug and pull all the money and finance out of it. It's just like, oh.
I know.
So I understand why Chris Moyles might have said that, being quite flippant.
I missed that whole thing.
Oh, really?
Chris
So it's
is
interesting that if he is into music and that kind of stuff, then fair play to him. So just before we move on from the album and all that thing, so after the Fure, that had kind of peaked, and then you put out, was it Man Not a Boy? Was that the...
Yeah, that was the second single from the film.
Okay.
So it was it was one of those songs that I told you I wrote that one as well, but the lyrics were written by Nigel Hinton.
Okay.
From the film, so it was very much like still concentrating on the songs from the film. So it was promoting the film.
Right, and then once that promotional cycle had come out, and was the album called Buddy's Song Soundtrack?
Yeah, original soundtrack. Something like that.
Okay, yeah, and then that came out, and then at that point, once that album had run its course, what happened with the record label after that? What happened with you post that album campaign?
Okay, so when that was done, we moved on to our album 2.
Yeah.
Which ended up being called Get the Picture.
All right.
And I concentrated on working with Nik.
Okay.
So Nik and I wrote tons of songs. Then we got a guy called Pete Vitesi involved. And so Nik and Pete were basically the producers.
Right. Nik Kershaw.
Nik Kershaw
Yeah.
and Pete Vitesi, yeah. And so we made an album. I had a studio at this point because I, did that classic pop star thing. Was like, just spend money on everything.
Yeah.
You get a car.
Yeah.
I did all that shit, and so I bought a studio and spent a freaking fortune on it. And so we recorded there. And in fact, lots of people recorded in my studio over the years. Yeah,
really?
Hall & Oates.
Hall & Oates?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Roger came down and did some stuff.
Where was the studio?
It was in Sunningdale. Yeah.
Where's that?
In Berkshire.
Oh, right.
And then Robbie came and did all the demos for the Millennium album. He wrote Millennium outside my studio, So,
Robbie Williams.
Yeah, because obviously I know those guys from years gone. And
he was huge at that point.
oh, massive at that point, huge. And basically my studio was built onto the side of my parents' house.
Okay.
So Robbie came to stay with us.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I remember Let Me Entertain You came out, and then he put Angels out, it was so odd that he was because it was like he wasn't your typical pop star.
No, not at all.
He was kind of, and I understand.
Well, everyone thought Gary was going to be the breakout star of Take That.
Absolutely.
But no.
But he had a little bit more edge to him, and he was cheeky, and he gave a much better interview. And Angels really took him to the next level.
He had the song. It was about the songs,
Yeah.
They were good. The songs were good.
I remember he did, because when he played, I think 5 or 6 nights at London Arena, which was in Docklands, and I was the squash coach. I moved to London.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah, the gym on the side. So whenever they had an arena gig on,
it just came on.
The tennis courts behind the stadium, the arena were kind of cordoned off and made into like the backstage area, and I just remember just seeing all the record label Bentleys turn up in the club car park. It was just cordoned off a VIP, and I was just like, there's so much money here. In fact, I think the Finn brothers opened for him at that show.
That makes sense. Look, I used to love Crowded House.
Yeah.
But no, Robbie, he was next level, man. He was like probably the biggest pop star of our generation, I would say.
Yeah.
Well,
he signed that £100 million record deal with EMI, didn't he?
Absolutely. There's a documentary just coming out.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's coming out this week or next week. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, apparently he's been very, very open and honest, and it's quite raw, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. So.
Yeah. Because he was omnipresent.
He was. It was one of those love him or hate him type of things, but most people loved him.
Yeah, well, that's it. He's a Marmite character, I think. I don't know. He's because he's always had that. He's got confidence to him.
I think it's for me that kind of the reason that is because he's so honest and raw and real.
Yeah.
And some people just take it the wrong way.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that people feel. you know, when you're so successful, you should have a humility to you.
He does have humility, you see.
Well,
That's
he does behind, but not
Yeah.
in front of the camera.
No, that's
he's
true.
like this larger than life. Fucking, I
that
am the
confidence thing.
swaggering. I'm the
Yeah.
geezer. But when behind the scenes, he doesn't strike
he's
me
a
like
pussycat. He's
yeah,
lovely.
Yeah,
He's,
yeah.
You know, and I've known Robbie for a long time. I'm not, you know, we're not like Bezzy mates or anything, but like we know each other well enough where I can say genuinely he's a really good guy.
Good.
Yeah, he is.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So then you set up your studio. You finished the album with Nik.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we keep getting going in different directions. Yeah, so we did that album, and I'm actually really, really proud of that record.
Yeah.
There's some great songs on there. You know, I was still with Chrysalis, obviously.
Yeah.
And you know, there was a lot of promise there, but unfortunately, the first single didn't go.
Right.
And they dropped me.
Right.
And that was it.
After single one.
Single one.
Did they put the record
They didn't
out?
even put it out. They didn't even put it out. It did relatively well in certain parts of Europe, around Europe. I think I had a number one in Germany with the first single, and
right.
You know, it did okay.
At the time, did you feel like the label kind of weren't pushing it correctly? So that's the reason why it didn't take. How did you?
I'm not making excuses for it. I don't know. Maybe just the timing and the zeitgeist wasn't right for that kind of music. And
okay.
Perhaps that, you know, it was quite polished pop.
Yeah.
And you know, as I said before, Nirvana had kind of kicked the doors down a little
right.
bit. And you know, it's hard to say. And you know, I don't have any regrets at all on it. And I'm kind of glad I've experienced that kind of ups and downs of
Absolutely.
it. You know, it's all good. But yeah, it's one of those things. Sometimes the stars align, and sometimes they don't.
Well,
Jay,
they had already aligned with your first record, and you'd gone stratospheric and had a top 10 in America. And
I was a has-been pop star at 23.
that must have been quite difficult to process, though, especially if you were kind of like getting into like Radiohead and all that kind of stuff, and you were trying to distance yourself from it. And did you at the time feel like you wanted to sack music off, or did you?
Never.
You wanted to keep with the music and keep.
Yeah, I'm quite a tenacious character, you know. As there's always going to be knockbacks in this business, right? You know,
absolutely.
It's one of the things I always say when people say, "Do you have any advice?" You know.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, you have to be tenacious, you know, and you can't have a backup plan, you know, and it has to be all in. You have to have the passion for it. You have to live and breathe it. You have to wake up thinking about music, and you can't pass the guitar without picking it up.
Yeah,
that's when you know you're on the right path.
Yeah,
you know, and so I always knew deep down. I always knew that I was good at what I did. Yeah. You know, I know I'm a good singer, and I'm not being arrogant about it. I am a fucking good singer.
Yeah.
And you know, and I know that I have that talent. So I always thought, you know, I love doing it. I love music. I love writing music. I love performing. And while I'm still being able to make a living at it, I'm going to carry on.
Yeah.
So I dusted myself off after those days. And it was tough. It was tough. Fucking hard work. Yeah.
For a young person to deal with, for people to stop answering the phone, it's different.
Yeah.
I've been through it. I've been dropped from record labels, and it is quite a difficult.
It's hard. Yeah, because I built up a kind of what I would consider myself as a kind of a family.
Yeah.
With the record company girls and stuff like that. We used to travel around with, and it was like what you were saying with Robbie, you know, we used to have an entourage coming around, and I was never as big as Robbie, but like, you know, it's like that. And then suddenly when they dropped you can't get them on the phone anymore.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh shit, so none of that was real?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But good to know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, to me, I was like, oh, okay, so that wasn't real. This is real.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm really, really glad to have experienced that and realised that at a very early age,
right.
to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Because who knows what I'd have been like. I'd probably been arrogant shit, you know, if I'd have carried on with that kind of success.
Well, yeah.
You know, so
until the wheels fall, and inevitably the wheels always do seem to tend to fall off. For most artists,
there's a time, isn't there?
Yeah, everything's, you know.
Time is a weird thing that does to successful people, because not only is it that times change and then suddenly you become uncool, which is what I think what happened to me. Mm-hmm. but your own, but you yourself have to change. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's preconceptions that you have to get around, and I still have that now. So I'm defined by most people that know the name Chesney Hawkes. I'm defined by, that year when I was 19 years old. Really, by that little tiny piece of my life.
Yeah.
And it's like I'd like anyone to kind of look at that time in their life and say, would you like to be defined by that?
Yeah, well, but yeah. But I don't know. It's like when I was that age, like I feel like I was much less precocious, and I don't know. It just feels like it would have been a lot worse if it had been my year when I was 19. I was into like metal and punk, and I was really awkward and so spotty and fucking. I wasn't wearing a cool jacket with cool blonde hair, like playing, touring with Bryan Adams and stuff like that. Sure. It's kind of, and even though it's a snapshot, that kind of you feel defined you. And I guess on a musical level, it kind of does it. But I think it's almost like you're part of the top 1% that have experienced this ride. That is the dream. To go from kind of auditioning for a film to then having this. It's almost like a movie, where it's a wonderful story, but then obviously off the back of that, it's it must have been hard. It must be hard to process and stuff. But
I think I processed that stuff years later, Jay.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Because at the time, I remember even thinking it and saying it to people that were asking if I was okay, just like, it's water off a duck's back, I'll just dust myself off and get up and go again. Yeah. Which is what I did. Yeah. As I formed a band, start again, kept writing songs, Some of them were maybe a little more bitter than they were before. Yeah. But years later, when you get into your 40s even, and you look back and, sometimes it's nice to it's good, I should say, it's not nice because it's fucking painful, is to, to dig that dusty old pebble off and look at it and see, actually that was a bit shit. That actually was a difficult thing to go through, and you dust it off and have a proper look at it. Yeah. That's part of therapy, isn't it? And,
absolutely.
I remember there were times, I think in my 40s, where I kind of went back to that, and I was like, that actually wasn't okay.
No.
What happened there. And I didn't have the support that I needed, really. I had a good family around me and everything else. But they hadn't gone through that. It was like, it's difficult to kind of... How do you relate to somebody and say, oh, you're okay, but, that song was great. And I remember when I got dropped from a major record deal, and my management fucked me off, and it was... I was getting fat. And I was like, I remember I'd go to the squash club and people were like, how's the music? Yeah. You don't want to talk about it,
no, and I'm just like, and they're being completely sincere. And then you say, it's okay. And you try and change that. And they're like, have you ever thought about going on X Factor? And it's coming from a place of good kindness.
Oh, I used to get people who say, why don't you just get another record on the radio?
Yeah.
Why don't you just get on TV again?
Yeah.
It's like... It just doesn't work like that, but no, I thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I never thought about that.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's like, it normally comes from a place of kindness.
Yes, totally, yeah.
But when you're reflecting on it, you're like, you want to just
It hits a nerve.
It does hit a nerve, and you can't really just bite back. You just kind of... You've got to go, oh, yeah, cheers, and it's...
But the thing is, this business is like, and I've said it a few times in this conversation already. It's like you have to have tenacity. If you don't, you're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. Yeah. I've had so many chapters over the years, and I've been knocked back quite a few actually. And I'm still loving writing music. I'm still enjoying making music and playing live. And, I've got a new album coming out next year.
Fantastic.
Very, very excited. I did it with Jake Gosling, who's, I don't know if you know Jake. He was the guy that, he's an A-list producer now, but he discovered Ed Sheeran. He's worked with One Direction. And,
amazing.
It's all sorts of people, KSI even. he's great.
So your plan for just moving on slightly, your plans for the next year?
I'm actually going to have to wrap up soon.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, no worries. So your plan is, you've got an album coming out next year.
Yeah.
And you've got a big show at Kentish Town Forum.
That's the kind of push towards that show is like the kind of launch pad for the new album, new single, and everything else. Yeah.
Great. Well, Chesney, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, you too,
Good
mate.
luck with the album and the shows. And
I'll make sure Steve gives you a copy of the album when it comes out.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah,
I'll be checking it out when it comes out. Let me know, and I'll give it a shout on our socials and all that.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Cheers, Chesney.
Cheers.